Hi, Facebook world. It's me, Jessica Weaver. I am the author of Strong Woman, Stronger Assets, Wealth Advisor, Money Coach, and I typically work with women in transition, especially retirement. And I have brought Mary Sheen with me today. Mary is an amazing woman, mother, entrepreneur. She is also a coach in public speaking, one of the scariest things around. Mary, so, Mary, tell us about you, who you are, and a little bit about yourself.
Well, Jessica, thanks for inviting me. I'm honored to speak to your group of friends. Well, who I am is I'm a transformational public speaker, trainer, and coach. And what I do is I help men and women who are typically experts at what they do, usually very, very good at what they do, but they have the challenge that when they're speaking in front of a group of people, that they have that disconnect of being able to showcase their brilliance so that the audience knows that they're brilliant at what they do. And so what I help them do is help them get very super clear on what they stand for, and then to be able to communicate that in an engaging, succinct, and authentic way so that they can move their audience to action.
Very cool. I recently read Mary's book, right? What is the name of your book? I see it in the background there.
Present yourself in public speaking, tell your inner critic to shut up, and the real you to speak up.
Yes, the critter part of our brain. We all have that. I was going through that last week. I was in such, we call it the swamp, right? In our world, where I kept thinking, I'm not good at what I do. I'm not worth what I charge. And it was beating me down, beating me down. And I had about three really, really good meetings with the women I work with clients last week. And by the end of the week, I'm like, I am a freaking good advisor. I am good at what I do. But I
Yeah.
love your book because I can relate with it personally and also with the women I work with. We are our harshest critic.
Mm.
And your book helps us figure out what are we telling ourselves, how it's not productive, what we tell ourselves and how to move past it.
Right. Yes.
You brought up when you're saying your audio logo about showing people, giving them a way to show their brilliance with the people around them. Do you find it a big difference when people are speaking when they're passionate about something and when they don't really care about it?
Yeah. Yeah. I get that question a lot. There is a difference, right? Some of my clients, for example, work in the corporate world, and uh, they are asked to give a presentation sometimes. So it's not of their own volition, right? So that adds an extra layer of complexity to it because some of the material that they're asked to present isn't the most exciting material, right? So, for example, there's numbers involved, there's data involved. And what I always say is the first sale, whether it's you're selling on stage or whether you're just speaking on stage, it doesn't matter. It's a form of selling, right? Because you're selling your message, you're selling the information that you have to present to the audience, and the first sale is always to yourself. So
Yeah.
even and I have been in situations like this in the past where I've had to present material that it wasn't necessarily the thing that I would first choose to present for myself, right? So you have to really find that space within yourself to connect yourself to the material in such a way that you're excited about it, that you find, even if it's a small element or a small slither within the message, within the overall message that you're excited about, and then connect yourself to that component so that when you're on stage, your energy's on. I mean, I don't know how many times in the past where I've stood in front of just before standing in front of the stage, like it's, let's say it's a 2 hour training, or it's a 2 day training for that matter, right? And then it's a Monday morning, early in the morning. Do you think that I always feel like giving a presentation? No, but I basically get myself into a state where I'm excited about it, so that when I start speaking, it's going to come from the authentic place of excitement
Mhm.
rather than the place of, oh, I'm bored about this information and this is something I have to do, right? How many times have people out there been giving a presentation that they feel like they have to give, they can't wait till it's over, right? So when you're coming into it with that mindset, which is, I guess, primarily the topic we'll be speaking about, is it's all about knowing how to connect with the mindset that is the most optimum for you before and during you giving your presentation.
Yeah, and it helps to get you through it and it helps the audience get through it. It's so much better when the person speaking is excited about it. Otherwise, everyone's like, wah, wah.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
start falling asleep.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of things. I mean, obviously, the 15 minutes that we have together isn't enough to go through everything, and every individual person is different,
Right.
and their stuck points and the stuck points within their own mind is different.
Mhm.
And so my job as a trainer, as a coach, is to dig and ask a lot of questions and get to the layers, get through the layers of superficiality until I get to the core of what they're actually concerned about. And once that I can pinpoint that, and once they are aware of it, then it's that much easier to help them get over that, because otherwise it's just something nebulous that all they know when they're on stage is I'm nervous, and they have no idea why, they have no idea exactly what it is that they're concerned about, and they're a mess when they're up there. And when you're a mess, then it creates that invisible barrier between you and the audience. If you can't be so clear of your own mind and be present in the present moment with the audience, then what you're being with while you're on stage isn't the audience. What you're being with is that internal dialogue, the messiness of the internal dialogue that's going on, and that's what you're focused on. Then there's no way you can connect with the audience, let alone be effective.
Yeah, it takes you completely out of the moment. It takes
Yes.
over your body. You start having symptoms. You're sweating. You're shaking. I remember one of the first big presentations I had to do was in front of a class, probably about 40, 50 people. And I had a pointer. And I'm like, I can't use the pointer because I'm shaking too much. They're going to see me shaking all over the screen. Wait, and then I kept thinking about that. And do they notice it? Do they see that I'm nervous? That means I'm not qualified at doing what I do. And it brings you further and further back from the audience and from connecting with them and
Mm-hmm.
seeing it through. So where do you think these fears about public speaking come about? Like, I think it's probably insecurities. I think how we live our life is based on our insecurities, right?
Yeah.
Whether we try to overcompensate and be too confident and show our ego, or we get too timid, we're insecure, so we don't go for something. And are there stories that we tell ourselves? Is it an experience in childhood that bring up these insecurities and these fears? What do you think it is?
Yeah, it's all of the above, and I dive into it in my book, right? I think the most, and so let's talk about that at a high level, and then I think the more important thing is to uh, give tips on how to overcome that to begin with, right? So where it comes from is our mind, our brain is designed, it's hardwired for survival, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I go into detail about it in my book. So there's a part of our brain called the amygdala that is specifically designed for our survivals. It's fight, flight. You may have heard of it: fight, flight, or flee.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So how we respond to a threat is flight, i.e., run away,
Mm-hmm.
avoidance, fight, which is stay there and fight, or to freeze up, right? So that's the part of our brain that's responsible for our survival. And in the modern world, we no longer, and that's through evolution that happens. And it's good to have that, because we do need to survive, right? We can't be dead, right?
We
That
need a little bit of fear so we don't
Yeah.
jumping off bridges and stuff.
Right, exactly. So it's there for a reason, and for a good reason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to public speaking, though, the equivalent of the threat, right? Think about this: when you're on stage and you're just about to speak to a bunch of people, and you can just see eyes looking at you, right? So there's one of you facing all of them.
Yeah.
In that moment, does it feel to you like you're part of the group, or does it feel like there's one of you and there's many of them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's almost like this um,
Yeah.
trigger of me against them, and so the perceived threat then is, I must be accepted. If we're going to cut to the chase, you must be. That's what it is.
That's so true. You're right.
We need to
The need
be
to accept.
accepted. I need to be accepted. I need to be liked. This is like the most modern day fear is concern of what other people think of us, right? And that comes up for everybody. It's a human thing because the need for connection and the need for acceptance is so huge. It's fundamental in our DNA. And so when you're up there and it feels as though there's one of you against many of them, that's when that fight or flight kicks in, and hence the nervousness, hence the fears, right? So that's to answer your first question. So the more important thing is, okay, so that's fine, that's where it comes from. So what do I do about it, right? How do I get over that? What are the
Yeah.
tips you can give me to get over it? Well, the first thing is you being aware of that is very important, right? That's what's going on. And what I say to the people that come to me is, number one, well, they ask me, why'd you write the book? Why did you bother writing the book? Some people say, well, I don't even have time to read the book. What's the message? The message I want everybody to have by the end of reading the book is just one thing, which is, OMG, I am normal. You mean this happens to everybody? It's not just me, right? Because when
On
you're
some level, it happens to everybody. Yeah.
to everybody, which means that by itself hopefully will take the pressure down, right? It's not just you, it happens to everybody. For me, during my own journey, and by the way, I didn't start out speaking in front of a group of people and being comfortable. I started out a long time ago. I actually used to be a computer programmer, hiding behind my desk, being very self-conscious.
Very different.
Yeah, I was actually speaking on
World.
a webinar recently, and the first question they asked me was, Mary, what inspired you to get into public speaking? And my answer was, honestly, it wasn't inspiration, it was desperation. Because I got to that point where
Yeah.
the pain of speaking was so bad that I just knew that I had to get over it. I didn't want to survive like that anymore, right? Because not being able to speak up is just a really painful way of existing. Knowing that I have things to contribute, knowing I have a personality one-on-one with my friends, but not being able to express that and not being able to be, truly myself on the stage and being who I am one-on-one with my family and friends on the stage felt really inauthentic and disconnected, right?
Couldn't
So
be your true self.
yeah,
Live your fullest life. It was holding you back.
right. So what I say, sometimes the way I explain it to people is like, you can even relate to this. I'm sure you can relate to this. Is like, if you think of your entire range of your personality as a circle, right? Kind of like the color wheel, the spectrum.
Yeah.
Many of us, when we're on stage, we only show a small portion of our personality.
We definitely do.
So my job is to help you to sort of expand that range so that you're no longer afraid of the thing. Because really, when you think about it, if I had to summarize, I know this is a long answer to your question. If I had to summarize, right, one thing, have you ever heard that people's number one fear is public speaking? Yeah. So right off the bat, I say that's a myth. It's not. People's number one fear is not public speaking. Do you know what it is?
No.
It is not public speaking, but it's public judgment.
Definitely. Yeah, we hate being judged.
Hate being judged. So think about this. And then when you dig another level, it goes even one layer deeper than that. It's not so much your fear of public judgment. It's your fear of whatever it is you judge yourself. So whatever it is that you feel is the worst thing about you, right? For example, when we dig down to the layers, it's always, I'm not good enough. I'm not something enough, some limiting belief we have about ourselves that we're not only afraid to admit to ourselves, let alone now being on show for everybody else to see. Right?
Me too. Yeah. So people judging us and then us judging ourselves.
Yeah. So number one.
Worst critic.
Right. So number one is being aware that is the case. And then the work, right? Because work is to then go through the processes. And that's why it's so important to have guidance to guide you through that process. That's what I do with my clients, is guide them through the processes so that those inner critic voices aren't going to stop them from taking action.
Yeah. Very true. I feel it's very similar to my process in my Strong Retirement Club with the women, public speaking is scary and retirement is scary for people. Right? There are a lot of fears, a lot of money fears come into place. And what you're showing them is they're understanding themselves better, understanding their personalities. And this is what I say in my club. We need to understand retirement. We need to understand all the components. When we don't understand something, we get very stressed by it and overwhelmed by it. And it builds bigger and bigger fears and insecurities. And then you're giving them the knowledge to overcome that, to understand, to know what's going on in their mind as they're on stage, the inner workings. And that's the second part, is gaining the knowledge to feel really good while you're on stage, or if you're going through retirement or whatever you're doing with your money. And then building the belief that you can do this, that you're fine, and then trusting yourself to do it. When you say it's your judgment against yourself, I think our biggest fear on stage or in retirement is that we're going to fail ourselves, right? It's not that the process is going to fail. It's not that the retirement plan is going to fail. It's that we're going to fail ourselves.
Right.
So I think when you have the understanding, you have the knowledge, you can build the beliefs, and then you can build the trust so you can trust yourself to be your best version of yourself on stage. You can be your best self through retirement. You can be your best self with your money, with your work. It's building trust in ourselves, I think, is such a big part of having that success mindset.
Yeah, I was actually, I actually really enjoyed reading your book as well.
Ah, thank you.
Your book, and I think that, and that's why I was looking forward to this conversation, because I think what you and I do have, what it has in common is the mindset component, right?
It all starts there.
It all starts there, right? And with the money, especially because that's the work that you do around finances and money, I feel like there's nothing more fundamental to trigger people into survival mode than the concern about money, right? And so public speaking is also another one of those things that triggers people into the response mode of, I need to survive. And, so the survival mode is kicked in. And so, I remember reading your book and seeing how there were so many stories that you told us about, these stories of your past, and how these stories that we accumulate from our past affect us who we are now without even realizing, because once they seep into the subconscious, then the way we relate to our thoughts it's like it's real. And that's what I say to my clients. I say, if we're not aware of that inner critic voice that's happening, that internal dialogue, if you get really quiet and being really honest with yourself, it's always happening. There's always an internal commentary that's happening, right? So if we don't take the time and energy to pause that and just for one moment say, hey, wait a minute, is what my internal dialogue saying to me, is that actually true, right? And write down, for example, my clients, because it's invisible. That's why it's so tricky, because these thoughts is not tangible, and it's not something.
And like you said, they're always flowing.
They're always flowing, and so it's invisible. So without writing them down, it can easily just we can easily relate to it as it's the truth, right? So it's very important to question your own thoughts.
It's true, because if you just let them keep going and going, you're gonna, every time that happens, say, I always stutter when I speak in public, and then you speak in public and you stutter. You're reaffirming those beliefs, that internal dialogue, and it's only going to get worse and worse and worse.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, exactly. So by identifying them and seeing, is this really true or not, or am I just proving myself right? Because that's what I keep thinking about. Those are my beliefs. It's the same thing with money. Like you said, that survival mode. I'm sure there are people who come to you, they go, I just need to survive this presentation.
Yes.
I just need to get through it.
Yeah.
And that's not a way to live on the stage. It's not going to help your career. And it's the same thing with your money. I just need to get through this period and figure out how to pay for this. I just need to get through college. I just need to get through this job. That's not a way to live your life. Just be through it. And that's what the survival mode, it keeps you stuck in that mentality.
Mm, mm, mm,
Shifting it and saying, instead of surviving it, let's thrive on the stage. Let's thrive with our money.
mm.
So
Yeah.
I like that idea of writing down whether it's your internal critic for being on the stage and presenting or with your money. Like I have a lot of women who say, I'm always going to be in debt. I'm never going to get out of this hole. I'm never going to have enough money. It's like, well, is that really true? So I'm going to take that. I'm going to steal that from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Journaling those internal dialogue, what you keep hearing, what you keep telling yourself.
Yeah, I mean, one of my pet peeves, right, around public speaking education is that there's a tendency, and by the way, I have been through many, many, many trainings in my,
I
20
bet.
years of
I
being
bet
trained.
you have.
And the commonality and also the pet peeve at the same time is, I shouldn't say pet peeve, that sort of misrepresents it. The missing component of public
Mm-hmm.
speaking education out there is there's a lot of focus on the mechanics of speaking.
Yep.
So in other words, mechanics meaning how do you use your voice, how do you stand, eye contact, all of this, which is important. I'm not saying that's not important. It is important. But in my experience, what's even more important is yourself, working on
Mm-hmm.
yourself and your relationship to yourself, right? Because once you have this and the relationship to yourself takes and building the strength of that takes a lot of self inquiry,
Mm-hmm.
right? In other words, looking at yourself and having the right processes. And in many cases, it's so much easier to have the guidance because it's very challenging for us to see ourselves objectively because we're so close, right?
Yeah.
And so having that objective insights about yourself, working on yourself, what actually stops you and how do you conquer that? What are the processes? How do I actually get to the other side of that fear, the other side of that resistance, is the work that I help clients do. Because no matter how many times at the beginning when I started teaching this, I'd say, okay, so here's your toolbox of engaging stories, and here's your toolbox of using your voice well, standing well, and they were still nervous, right? So
Yeah, it
that was
didn't help with those fears. You're right.
didn't help. So it's about
Mm-hmm.
looking at yourself and really having the desire and humility, because it takes humility to look at yourself. You're not going to like everything you see, right?
No,
It
it's
takes
you have to be
humility.
very honest with yourself too.
Yeah, yeah. And so facing that inner critic and on the positive side, right? Facing your own inner critic and facing your own deepest fears about yourself and your own worst judgments of yourself. On the other side is going to be this freedom, this liberation, that knowing and not just knowing intellectually, but knowing in your heart and in your soul that those fears don't actually represent who you really are, right? And that's why the title of my book, Tell Your Inner Critic to Shut Up So the Real You Can Speak Up. The whole point of that title is it's meant to trigger, it's meant to solicit a question within yourself to ask yourself, so if my inner critic is not the real me, who the heck is the real me? And so that's where we go into the self inquiry to find that, so that we can have you standing on the stage and knowing clearly what you stand for, what your highest values are. So when you speak from that space, how you come across is going to be completely different than if you were speaking from the vantage point of the inner critic.
Oh, that's so true. That's great. That's very good insights. So, Mary, what is the next step for people if they want to take control? Is it to get their book? Is it to talk with you? What do you think? What would
I
be the
think,
best way?
I mean, I think the if it depends on where they're at, right? I feel
Mhm.
like if people that are completely ready and they know that this is something they want to work on, then yeah, have a conversation with me, and then we can find out, what's the next step for you.
Mhm.
And for those people who are just curious and they're just, yeah, this really makes sense, this conversation, and they just want to read a little bit more about it, then they can totally get my book. That's what it's there for, right?
It
In
is an
fact,
awesome book, and it gets to know you too. They get to know your background, why you're so passionate about what you're doing,
yeah.
and how you
When
work.
and in all honesty, one of the main reasons I wrote the book was people kept asking me, Mary, I know you told us that you used to be this, super self-conscious computer programmer, and by the way, I don't believe you. And true, it's so true. There's like, well, and now, you're so comfortable in front of the room. What would you do? What'd you do? What happened in between? And I'm like, how much time do you have? I can talk
So it
until
was
I'm blue.
easier to write the book.
So now I just say, when they ask that question, I just say, you know what, great question. Go read this book. And the students that are serious and the ones that want to take it to the next level, they will get the book.
Hmm. I wish I had your book years ago because I was a very shy, I grew up shy kid and very insecure, not a lot of confidence at all. And even when I started my career, was that over 8 years ago, I felt like I was a very quiet, I didn't speak out or speak my mind or embrace my personality, especially in my work, like you're talking about before. And it's taken me so many years to figure it out on my own. And we have the same business coach. So that helped to fast forward it and speed it up. But I feel like if I had your book, it would have taken me so many years.
Mm. Well,
So
thank you.
I
Yeah.
think that's a big thing, people with their money or any of these fears that they have. When we try to figure it out on our own, it takes us so many more years. It takes us a lot more time and a lot more energy and bad speaking engagements or bad mistakes with our money
Mm.
instead of just asking for that help and reaching out or getting a resource like your book. Will
Mm.
speed it up and get you there faster.
Mm. And in all honesty, the most rewarding part about what I do is witnessing that transformation in my clients and
Yeah.
seeing how they were when they came to me and how they were, after working with me. That and the transformation, it's kind of like them learning to ride a bicycle. Once they learn, they're not going to forget how.
Yeah.
And the question you brought up, I felt it was a really good piece of wisdom that you brought up earlier about the not knowing how,
Mhm.
because the not knowing how and then feeling like it's a big black box, that's what stops most people in their tracks, is
Yeah.
because they don't know how, right? And so that's why I'm so appreciative of your book, and that's honestly why I wrote my book, is kind of to demystify some of those processes for people, so that at least they have a handle on, oh, even though I don't know how, at least I have an idea how now. And so it gets them over that hump.
You probably experience this too when you meet with a prospect. When I meet with somebody for a strategy session, I tell them beforehand, we're not going to have all the answers by the end, but my commitment is that you are still going to feel so much better because at least you see the hope that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that it can happen. And by the end, they say, yeah, we made a lot of progress. We still don't know all the answers yet, but they finally know. They know what they need to do to get there. They know what strategies they need to implement, how they're going to get there. And they have such a better grasp of what's going on with their money. They feel like they have the control back.
Mm.
And it's probably the same with you. When you talk, when you go through the book, your eyes are going to open up. You're going to start thinking differently, and you're not going to be a perfect speaker by the end of the book, but you're still going to feel so much better because now you have a process, you have a method, you know how you can get yourself there if you just invest the time to do it, the money to
Mm.
do it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, for the people that are listening, I feel like, um, it's the whole process. The whole process is takes your investment of your time, your energy, and it's I can tell you, if you want to be really good on stage and you want to influence your audience, it's not just a head game. It isn't just a head game. It's not enough just to have the right things to say, and you need to invest your heart and your soul in believing what you're saying,
mhm,
so that in itself is going to come across differently. Your message is going to come across differently. Same words but different intention. It's going to be that much more powerful. So definitely, I would say to your listeners that, um, take the time and energy to invest in working on yourself. And believe it or not, it can be a fun process speaking on stage once you're no longer afraid.
yeah, and it saves you by investing that time and money now. It saves you so much energy worrying about your presentations in the future because now you know how you're going to handle yourself. You know what to do. And I say that about money. How much do you end up thinking about your money issues? Is it every day? Is it every morning? Lose sleep overnight on it? It's probably the same thing with people who have a big presentation the next the next day, the next week, it hangs over their head the whole week, and they're wasting all this energy on it, all their focus on it, instead of going into it feeling really freaking good about it.
Yeah, exactly.
I like both of our books, even though completely different subjects, but we focus on the mindset. And it's not something big that you need to do, that you have to completely change how you speak, how you deal with your money. It's all these little tweaks and things that we modify to make it work better for you. I think people get overwhelmed. I'm going to have to completely change how I talk. I have to completely change how I handle my money. But just these small little steps, like your book, you have action steps, you have worksheet too throughout the book. These small little things that you can do to build and build and build onto it. My book, every chapter, there's a little call to action to just get you moving in the right direction so that you don't stay stuck where you are.
Right. I think the and that's a good point. It's about baby steps, right? I have a mantra. I have three mantras when it comes to growing, whether it's public speaking or anything. And the first one is baby steps. The second one is forward momentum. And the third one is enjoy the process, because that's the part that most people get tripped up on. Is they get stressed out, they forget to enjoy the process.
Yeah, they think I'll enjoy it once I get to X, once I get to a certain spot. Once I save up $100,000, I'll get to enjoy my money. Or once I get my first good speak engagement, I'll enjoy it. But you're right, we need to enjoy the journey of it.
Yeah, and it's the personal self growth that's also personally fulfilling. So the what I would say is to end our conversation, I think the thing to take away is being a great public speaker doesn't accidentally happen to you. You got to work,
Everyone has to work on it, right?
Don't wake up one day and goes, "Oh, I'm a good speaker now." No, that doesn't happen.
No, it doesn't. It took me a few years, probably about 8 years, and I'm still. But we're always getting better too. There's always a next level, right? For speaking, for our money, for our career. And I think that's what's important too, is to always be on that trajectory of always improving and always embracing ways to improve.
Exactly. Yes, thank you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I felt
Me
like
too. Thanks for joining us, Mary. If you want her book, where can they find it?
So it's on Amazon.com. If you search my last name, Cheyne, then it'll come up. Present yourself. Actually, the word present is in inverted commas because it's a play on words. Present as in presentation, and being present on stage. Present yourself in public speaking. Tell your inner critic to shut up and the real you to speak up.
I love it. And if they want to talk with you, where can they go?
So my website is magneticpodium.com, and you can go on there and say schedule a call with Mary, and I can get in touch with you that way.
Very cool. And if anyone wants my book, you can go to jessicaweaver.com. Info for my book is there, and also my blog, Not Your Father's Advisor, is there. But yeah, first step, I say get the book, and for both of us, we both are put it all out there. It's all out in the book. Our fears, where we came from, and it's a really good way to get to know us before taking that first step, or book a call. That works too. Thank you, Mary. I think we'll have to do this again because there's so much more we didn't go into.
Yeah, this is a great conversation, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Jess.
All right. Bye, Facebook world.
Bye.